wondering what's up with the apples. I mean, this is just like Nito side by side.
Better.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. We are so excited, so glad to have with us Zack Matheny, President of Downtown Greensboro Incorporated and a representative on Greensboro City Council. Zack, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah. Hey, how did you get here? Did you ride down on a trolley?
You know, I should have. I came from the chamber luncheon today, so I drove straight in from the Quarry Center.
You know,
you can just hop on and hop off.
I would have done that.
I said we missed an opportunity here. We should have done the interview on the
trolley.
Yeah. That's all right. We'll get you next
time.
Yeah, next time. It'll be around for some time. So tell us about that. Tell us about the trolley, how that came about, where this idea came from, and how it was batted around and everything.
You know, the cool thing about the trolley is it really came from the people, the citizens of Greensboro, through a participatory budgeting program. And, I think our city manager, Taiwo Jehovah, is very much into mobility and connectivity. And so the trolley came out of the participatory budgeting, but really has taken off. And it's amazing how many people come up to me and say, we rode the trolley, we had a great time, but by the way, could you put music on it? And so now we're going to have music started on the trolley. So it's really citizen community driven, which is awesome.
What kind of music are we talking about here?
Selfishly, I would look to Rock 92 and Dig Broadcasting with 107.5 and 92.3, since they're a downtown business. But I think you entertain whatever.
We can get a guy on there with drums, whatever.
Oh man,
I've heard John sing before. He's pretty good.
Oh man, we could get buskers on there.
Oh man,
you could do your Elvis
busking. That would be great on the trolley.
Oh, we could have a karaoke mic on there. Oh my God.
Then people wouldn't
get
off
off
the trolley, or they'd get off and never get back on.
Right.
But I got to tell you, so one day I'm down at Deep Roots and I'm watching, and I watched like 4 trolleys go by, nobody on them. And I'm thinking, man, this is terrible. And then the very next day, I'm downtown at what is it called, Northern Roots, the coffee shop. And 15 people get off the trolley. And I'm like, man, it just depends on where you're sitting. And I guess people don't want to go to Deep Roots by the trolley. I don't know.
Well, I think, that day could have been one of those days where they were testing out the footprint and where to go. There's no telling what it could be. It could have been a cool day and they were walking, but I think that by and large, what we've seen are people jumping in and jumping off the trolley. Whether it continues to be as it is, or if we modify the trolley from an old bus to, I've told people numerous times, if you could find a trolley, an actual trolley for sale within a financial reasonable budget, we'd buy it and institute it in there. And so I think we're open.
Well, it looks good enough. It's a good replica, or
for the test pattern, for what it is, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I have just watched in amazement at how DGI has done and taken over things that others have let slip, and how you have grown and done things that others haven't even thought of. So, tell us some about everything from beach music to 4th of July Festival.
The 4th of July Festival is an undertaking, to say the least. But I remember when I took over downtown, this is my 9th year.
Wow.
And Betty Cohn came to me and said, glad you're here. I'm going to retire, and we think you should take over the Fun 4th Festival of Lights. And at the time, I said, I'd be happy to take over the Festival of Lights, but I don't want the Fun Fourth. The reality is, if it wasn't us, then who? And so we did take over the Fun Fourth, and we just had 100,000 people come downtown on July 4th. It was a great day, and if you really look at the community that comes out, it's everyone, and it's really special. And a lot of businesses that are local come down. Fast forward, or rewind, I would say, in last year, the Children's Home Society decided that beach music, they weren't going to revive it coming out of COVID. Their last concert was 2019. Well, that's something we listened to the community about. The community said, we really missed that. And so I asked my team, would you want to do it? And they said yes. And so I asked them 3 or 4 times, are you sure? And we said yes. And so we pulled together a great partnership, did it at the ballpark with the Grasshoppers, which was great. And we entertained over 6,000 people and had great bands. Now we're in the throes of Festival of Lights and the Holiday Parade, which is another event in the Holiday Parade that Downtown Greensboro Incorporated, DGI, wasn't doing. And the groups that run the Holiday Parade came to us and said, will you do it? And so in the spirit of community, those are 4 events right there that we did not do as an organization that we do now for the sole purpose of bringing the community together.
Well, I will tell you this, because I know Brian has a lot of questions and things he's been wanting to ask. And in fact, we've had to sit on him to make sure he didn't just call you up and ask. But every time there's a First Friday downtown, with the exception maybe one, Brian's there with the camera covering the events and showing that incredible diverse crowd that comes down there. So, you know, we're covering downtown Greensboro probably more so now than ever.
I see Brian everywhere.
Of course you do. And I used to think that the camera was actually attached to his shoulder.
Right.
You know, and then I looked and he was like carrying this tripod. It's like, man, you know, does the guy lift weights at home or whatever? But anyway, go ahead, have at it, Brian. I just had to tip my cap to all the hard work you've done at First Friday.
Man, I just, with the events, I want to go back to the events that we had talked about. What does it take to put events like that on? Because I know I've been to Downtown Greensboro Incorporated, and you don't have the biggest staff in the world to put all those events on. What does it take to make manifest all these events?
Yeah, it's, you know, Fun Fourth is, it's all hands on deck. We hire a third party, Sharp Pursuits, to help us with that. First of all, it takes money. So we, you know, these are not funded through the city, and they're not funded through the tax dollars that support the Business Improvement District. We, Keith Holliday works with us on development, and we go out and raise the money to put it on. Fun Fourth is a $125,000 festival. Beach music we raised $50,000 to put that on. Festival of Lights is probably $85,000, and the parade with the balloons is about $80,000 to put that on. And again, none of which really comes from the business. That's all money we have to raise. And so you can't do it without sponsors. So if anybody's looking out there thinking about it, we need your help. Then it comes down to, you know, pulling a small team together and working with the city. Josh Sherrick, I give tremendous kudos for. Josh works here in the Cultural Arts Building and is a terrific asset for the city.
He's a great friend of ours.
He's terrific. And so going through those and working with, you know, GPD and fire, but it's all hands on deck, and it takes a lot. And, you know, Fun Fourth, you're working on a national holiday. There's not a whole lot of people that sign up to do that. But when you come to work at Downtown Greensboro, you know that that's our Super Bowl. And so it's thoughtful, but when you see the smiles on people's faces from all demographics, it makes it completely worth it.
I'll tell you what, being at Fun Fourth this year, I'm surprised every year at how many people show up, and I think it was, what, like 50,000?
Oh, yeah.
People showed up to Fun Fourth. It's like a 90-something degree day.
Hot.
It's hottest day up until this coming Friday.
Good God. And I was like, man, I tell you, I tell you what, if it wasn't for the camera, I would have walked through the, ladder 5 hanging over there with the spout, with the sprinkler system going overhead. That was something. But what an event to put on! How many people came out? It was just outstanding. People love it.
Love it. But we've got Festival of Lights coming up, and that's after an election. And so typically after an election, 50% of the people are mad either way, and they don't know why, but their person lost or won. But that first weekend in December, we bring folks back together, led by the North Carolina A&T Gospel Choir, where we are singing holiday songs, Christmas songs. We're lighting the holiday tree live on television, so the tree's got to go off at the right time. And people are so happy. We're bringing them together. And that night is one of the busiest nights for our businesses. Businesses thrive on that. Talk about First Fridays.
Yeah.
That Festival of Lights, the first Friday in December. And then our staff, closes that up, turns around and is down here that morning putting on a holiday parade for arguably 60,000 the night before, 50,000 the next day for the holiday parade.
That's incredible. And when I think of the holiday parade, when you added the balloons, that just made it so, it took something that was good and an old idea and just elevated it. And, if we could get a balloon up there that looked like Jim Melvin or something, that would be
I was going to say, the Bryan Foundation, led by Jim Melvin, the Bryan Foundation underwrites the entire cost of those balloons.
We get Ed Kitchen balloon, and have that come across.
Or John Graham or Brian balloons.
They don't have enough canvas to make mine, but or whatever the stuff is. You had other.
If I was up there, you'd be like, "Who the hell is that guy?"
Yeah, who is that?
Yeah, so that was talking about the businesses. That was one of the things, coming out of COVID. Thank God we're pretty well out of COVID now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hope. You never
Right.
know, right? That was one of the things that the businesses were missing, or that they had told me, was that we're missing the festival, because the festivals were their moneymaker.
Right.
And that was, average maybe Saturday they might make some money, but that was the biggest.
Plus, you got Folk Festival coming up that I know
Folk
is
Festival.
a totally different thing. But we just saw Amy this morning, and my gosh, if you could just do a time-lapse photography of how Amy looks today and how she'll look on that last day of the festival, it's like, oh my gosh, no wonder we only do that once a year.
Yeah, same with all hours. I'll tell you guys, though, coming out, what folks are starting to realize in downtown Greensboro, and this is a phenomenal figure, this is true data that we've started using with artificial intelligence, which is really, you talk about Big Brother's around, whether you want to admit it or not. We have approximately 9 million people that visit downtown Greensboro every year. 9 million visitors. We have 1.7 million unique visitors. That means they count one time. 1.7 million. We compared that to Friendly Shopping Center. They get 1.8 million unique visitors. They have Harris Teeter, Whole Foods, all the shopping that they have over there, a movie theater, and Chick-fil-A. That, you think about the amount of visitors coming to downtown Greensboro. So to put that in perspective, if we have 9 million visitors coming to downtown Greensboro in a town of 300,000, that's amazing. People say the Tanger Center is a big deal, and it is. The Tanger Center equates to only approximately, or less than, 20% of our total visitors. So why is downtown continuing to grow? Because that number is significant. So festivals include that number, but it's everything that's happening. It's the excitement in downtown Greensboro. The Tanger Center, the ballpark, LaBauer Park, the trolley that people are like, what is this thing that I've heard about? Pangea just opened. Melrose Cafe is getting ready to open. Northern Roots opened a year ago. We've got Yokai I'm working on this morning that's going to open on Green Street. We had Neighbors just open not too long ago. And I can sit here and list more and more businesses that continue to open. Well, they have friends, and their friends are coming to support their businesses. So the culture that we've created, not by DGI necessarily, but through hardworking folks that are our neighbors. We don't have chains. We're a mom and pop downtown. Quite frankly, we're a mom and pop downtown that doesn't have an interstate that passes by it.
Right.
Think about it. Winston-Salem, Durham, Raleigh, Charlotte, of course, Wilmington to a certain extent.
Yep.
So to have that amount of traffic is amazing. And the retailers would tell you, because we have monthly retail meetings with our businesses to keep in constant contact, they will tell you that Sunday afternoons are one of their best days.
Wow. Wow.
That's changed. So there's a lot that's happened over the last 8 years that is truly exciting.
Well, I have to tell you, we had a tent last year for a folk festival, and it was our own tent, and we would have people come by and talk, and then we would go out with the camera and we'd talk to people. The very first couple, well, let me back up. What our whole mission was, we wanted to see how many people come to this festival. Mm-hmm. And not just the ones that we know, like there's Jim, there's Bob, there's, that kind of thing. And so the very first couple, we asked, where are you from? And they're from like down near Wilmington. They came up, they booked 2 nights at the Marriott downtown, mm-hmm. and they're here for the folk festival. Right. And it's like these kind of things, and they talked about what a beautiful city and talked about how they might want to live here at some point. I'm like, wow, this is not just Chamber of Commerce literature. This is real-time stuff. So mm-hmm. we're doing something right. We're
doing a lot. The community, Knox White, the mayor of Greenville, South Carolina, is a dear friend of mine. And you look at the successes of Greenville, South Carolina, and Knox will come up here and visit once a year because he was a Wake Forest guy, such as yourself.
Yes.
So he comes up and we walk the street and just look at our retail, look at what's going on. And I asked him, talking about advice, and he said, Greenville, South Carolina is a 20-year overnight success. So what we set in motion a while back, collaboratively, is we're achieving today. And I'll tell you, as I sit here today, this morning, I had been on phone calls for an additional $300 million of a development that we haven't even, nobody knows about, because it's happening kind of, but we're trying to figure out how to get it over the finish line. An additional $300 million. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, the investment downtown has been noticeable, and I think also we'll have to tip the cap to the Civil Rights Museum for their footprint and the growing footprint, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with the building they've acquired. But for me, to just have a vibrant downtown is you can see the evolution. There's a big difference.
Now, when they used to have Belk's downtown.
Oh yeah.
And we're talking to retailers, and when we talk to our mom and pop retailers, we're talking to them about, what do you think about us recruiting X, Y, Z company? What do you think about us recruiting a chain that might bring in more people? And it's interesting how the evolution has occurred, where it used to be like, absolutely not, no chains whatsoever. Yeah. But I mean, that one would be a pretty good one. And I'll tell you, that we, about 2 years ago almost, we started a downtown Greensboro ambassador program. And I would encourage y'all to get to know them as well. Sean Eisenbach is our manager. Their sole goal is hospitality. But what has changed is they've connected with virtually every person in need, whether they're experiencing homelessness, mental illness, in substance. They've been able to, last year, they were able to get 36 people off the street. They're connecting people with services. You mentioned you had Chief Thompson on. They're a good middle person between GPD and the social services. But you know what they were doing last week? The manager said, we've got a lot of stickers that people keep putting on buildings and electrical boxes and telephone poles. So they said, we want to volunteer to scrape everything off and just to clean up the city. And so you think about these big buildings that we're going to be building. But it's the little things that stimulate the mind to clean up the city. And if you look at every signal box when you're at a stoplight in downtown Greensboro, we a couple years ago started this where I was flipping through a newspaper and it had children's art. So we partnered with the schools, and every signal box in downtown Greensboro has children's art throughout the different schools throughout Guilford County.
We walk by this one right up here at the corner, and it's you see it, and then you start going around it because you want to see what's on the other side.
And we put their name, the first initial, and what school they're from. And so, it's about the big shiny stuff, but it's about the little shiny stuff as well that you can't forget.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: the footprint that is just left by the News and Record property down here. Tell us about some of the vision for that.
Huge.
Yeah.
I toured the property, the News and Record site, a couple weeks ago with the folks that have it under contract. They're also doing a property up in northeast Greensboro. I think it's called Pyramid Village still, where they're looking at building, they're partnering potentially with Cone Health and trying to reach out and do different things for the community to give healthcare access and office and development. These folks are the real deal. I feel very good about it, the News and Record going through. And I'll tell you that Downtown Greensboro Incorporated, along with a few other potential partners, are working on some things at the depot, which arguably is one of the coolest historic buildings in the Southeast that is otherwise underutilized, and how we can bring that back to the community. And so we do that, they focus on this, we continue to grow east and connect with Max Sims and what East Greensboro Now is doing.
Right.
So that project is huge, and we have every reason to support them getting that finished.
I think about the old timers, and when Brian said a minute ago, it was big when Belks was downtown. That's all you hear from old people, is the Belks was downtown. But at the same point, you hear people that said, I remember when they built the News and Record building, and that was the beautiful old Grand Hotel that sat right there, and they bulldozed it. So it's almost like we're just seeing a time evolve and progress really set in again. And when I think of that property, I think, we've got a beautiful opportunity to do it right.
I think Greensboro in general, we as a collective community triad made some mistakes.
Yeah.
We made some mistakes dealing with the financial industry. We made some mistakes dealing when Eastern Airlines and Piedmont Airlines merged, and not seeking to have that headquarters here. And I think the best thing about some of the mistakes and challenges that we've had over the last 30 years with the textile and furniture companies going
tobacco,
under is how do we capitalize on what we have now? We didn't bulldoze our historic buildings. That's key.
Yes.
We have culture, we have history, we're authentic. That's really special. And with Toyota coming on board, with Boom Supersonic coming on board, with what, I'll say what Dr. Cobain's doing in High Point and David Condon, we can connect. And I think, one of the things, if anything, that I think about all the time is how can we make sure we're collaborating, whether it's downtown Greensboro, the Chamber, everybody. We all got to work together, because if we're all together, there will be enough opinions that at the end we'll have a good final product versus sitting in a vacuum and making a decision by yourself and ultimately making a mistake.
Absolutely.
And that change that we talked about, that's been facilitated over time. So nobody knows that, Church Street was supposed to look like Wendover. It was supposed to be like the car dealership area. I think the lot where the library is now was a car dealership.
Gate City.
Yeah, that was a car dealership, and that got moved.
Children's Museum?
The Children's Museum, that was a car dealership. And actually, they were kind of ingenious. John Lomax was pretty ingenious. One of the oil pits is actually the construction site, and the basement. So, but it's just that change that's facilitated over time. And I think the Coliseum, when they originally built the Coliseum, it was talked about being around this area too. But everything kind of we kind of got spread out. And
Well, on that note, think about it. We did the Coliseum there. We allowed Lorillard, when they moved from New York, to go to this little street called Green Valley.
Mm-hmm.
United Healthcare had 3,000 employees up at Lake Jeanette before Lake Jeanette existed. We allowed Burlington Industry to move to Friendly Shopping Center before Friendly Shopping Center existed. So all of our corporations, instead of being centrally located where most cities would, we allowed them to push out and create urban sprawl, which now what do companies want to do? They want to come back to the center so that you have those unintended positive consequences of interaction. And so, unfortunately, right now, one of our biggest hurdles is the lack of office space in downtown Greensboro. We had a group looking for 50 to 60,000 square feet of office space.
You just can't find it.
And there's nothing contiguous, and it's difficult. To your point, John, we, 50 years ago, the building that we're sitting in now was the News and Record. Mm-hmm. And the city bought this, traded some land, tore down the King Cotton Hotel. We tore down the Bellmead parking deck, was another hotel. There was a mill. We didn't want to be known as a mill village in Greensboro. So we tore down most of the mills in downtown Greensboro, which most cities now have rehabbed and are beautiful buildings. So while we did a lot of good things, bad things, and indifferent things, the point is we got to get it right this time.
Yeah.
And it's our time.
Just like, and I can't remember who had transitioned it, but they had talk of that historic site right at the corner of the railroad tracks that split. There's that building that just got rumbled.
Cascade Saloon?
Yeah, the Cascade Saloon. It got rattled. Thank you. Yeah. It just got rattled so much that they didn't know what to do with it, and it got revamped a couple.
Public-private partnership that worked for that, and that place is a show place.
And I will tell you that wasn't perfect. I remember the time I was previous city council, and the city attorney said, I'm going to recommend to demo that building. The building's standing, and it's active.
And it's beautiful.
Now we have the Southern Railway building, which has been empty for many, many years. It's a beautiful building, boarded up, that North Carolina Railroad purchased last year. We have a meeting in September to discuss the future of that. This is probably our third or fourth meeting. I am very hopeful and almost assured that something's going to happen there positively sooner rather than later.
Is that the building behind it, or like that's
It's
just
the building
adjacent?
before you get to the railroad track.
Yeah, right next to it.
And the thing about that building is, if you look at it, they bricked up the building's windows and made them smaller. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the old postcard that were out there, turn of the century, showing how gorgeous it was with the canvas awnings and everything, if that's returned to its former glory and, something usable and meaningful could be located at that, what a great. And I will have to give you credit. I have seen the shifting of downtown Greensboro just move. I mean, it's not like it's in one spot. Downtown Greensboro is south. It's north. I mean, it just hovers around the area, and it's not specific to just one part. And I think that's due to a lot of, I mean, your office is down there now on the south end.
We don't have much space down there anymore. Yeah. The Fordham Drug Building was purchased last year, and we've showed that a few times last week. And so you're talking about, when I first got in, it was clean up empty storefronts. We still have a few that are challenging, but that one was purchased, has been cleaned up, and will be active probably within the next 12 months. The one behind our office, the former Dixie Lock and Key building, the activity there today, some folks that I met out of Winston-Salem, I went and visited them. They own a restaurant called Earl's. They own a restaurant bar called Joiners. They purchased that building and are making a new restaurant right there on Lewis Street. And so we're running out of space in the south end.
Yeah.
Now there's some space on the south side of Gate City. We've got to get over some hurdles, but you know, the excitement is palatable.
Well, you can feel the city growing that way,
Yeah.
but you also feel it growing this way. I mean, we've seen things come down. If someone said, "Where's the center of town?" I don't know exactly where I would put that X.
You know, the cool thing is the center of Greensboro is Market and Elm. That is the actual center of Greensboro. The Goral family many, many years ago. But if you think about where you're going to go, you can go to Lo-Fi and hit Joymongers, Neighbors, Sage Mule, Machete, the Borough Market, which is a great, cool place. And you can go in the middle where you have Crafted White and Wood, Blue Denim, Lau, Pizzeria Italiano. You can go a little bit to Hamburger Square. You've got, you know, Green Bean, Gray's, Natty Greens, Little Brother, McCool's. You can go across the tracks where you've got what I argue is the Austin, Texas of downtown Greensboro.
Yeah.
You know, you've got all kinds of cool stuff from Chez Genet, Jake's Diner just opened, Bourbon Bowl, Lewis and Elm. Like I said, you've got Fordham Drugs in play. You're going to have a new one. I went to South End last night. You got Boxcar. I love seeing Bill Norman at Fainting Goat Spirit rocking in his chair with his son. You know, I mean, it's just really eclectic and cool down there. And so you got 3 different avenues or areas that you can go and have a different experience in the same downtown.
And you can go up Battleground too towards the ballpark. You get it with Undercurrent.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
And then there's Zito Wine right there. You can have a nice little trip right after a ball game right there.
And you can take the trolley.
There you go.
There he is. There's the plug right there.
There it is.
Take the
There
trolley.
it is. Well, I have to tell you, I'm on the board of the Carolina Theater, and I'm just amazed post-COVID how we've been able to bring things back, and not just some things, but some pretty big things. And you know, Pete Davidson's here in town this week,
Oh, yeah.
and that's a hot ticket, you know. And for it to have come to Greensboro, somebody was looking, but the call came in directly from the booking company. So they were, and it was consummated within just a few hours. So it wasn't like a year ago they said, "Hey, would you like Pete Davidson?" It was almost a deal done on the spot. But I look along there, and even with the addition of the Hampton Inn, I mean, we're preparing for some major growth.
It is. You know, it's funny. The Pete Davidson show caught my attention. So I'm like, you know, I wouldn't mind going to that. So I looked up the calendar, and it's tomorrow night. And I have 2 other events tomorrow night. And so I'm like, but that's what Greensboro has come to.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a sleepy city. If you want to do something, get off the sofa, look at a calendar.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, there's a Salvation Army art thing tomorrow night that I'm going to be attending. We're kicking off a Gillespie golf course unveiling of a mural. That's significant. That's through the Wyndham Championship and the First Tee program. You got Pete Davidson. I mean, and you got all the other stuff that's happening. One of the coolest things too, you got the Carolina Theater, the community theater.
Yeah.
I took my kids to see
Oh,
High School
yeah.
Musical, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And it was cheap, but
We like to say
I love it.
inexpensive.
Inexpensive.
Yeah.
It's an inexpensive outing that you're supporting the community,
Yeah.
and you're seeing kids that
Or in the community.
are. As Rosemary Plabin's son was the lead, and it was just fun to see. So anyway,
Yeah. Well, I will say this, and we've discussed this many times, but we've tried to have Zack on here before, but there have been things that just pull him in various directions. And being a dad, being the head of DGI, and representing District 3, District 3 on the city council, it's like, my gosh, we're just lucky. In fact, lock the doors. We don't want him leaving.
I'll tell you that this community, I moved here about 2000, and the Greensboro community is a caring, loving community. And, you know, I keep that in mind. You know, many people know what I went through, my family went through with losing my wife to pancreatic cancer. And the community put their arms around me. There's been other things that have happened through my life that, you know, John, I'm not going to lie to you. I've questioned, you know, am I in the right city? Am I in the right city for my kids, my family? And at the end of the day, I love this city. The city has been very good to me, and my kids are a part of this city. And so, to your point about taking on city council again, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to give everything I got. And that's the only way my mom and dad taught me, was to you do it and do it to the best of your ability.
I'm reminded of an old Rodney Dangerfield joke where he said that at Christmas his brother got a BB gun, and he said, and I got a shirt with a target on the back. And I feel like any city council person, I don't care what district you're from, they should just go ahead and hand you the shirt with the target on the back.
Well, I'll tell you a quote that a good friend of mine told me recently. It's a Mark Twain quote. He said, don't ever get in an argument with an idiot. They'll take you down to their level and beat you with experience. So you just gotta stay positive, know that in the bottom of my heart, I'm making the right decision for folks. But also, I go back to the word collaboration. I don't make a decision in downtown Greensboro without everybody on my team being a part of it.
Yep.
And that's the key.
Tell us about your team and the ones that are right there with you. I know it's a small, tight-knit group, and you did mention Keith Holliday, which I would say might rival you at loving Greensboro.
Keith certainly loves Greensboro. I haven't been a mayor for 10 years. Keith's been great. Obviously, he knows a lot of people. He's helping us raise money, but also it's a nice institutional knowledge of the history of Greensboro.
Yeah.
And then we've got Joseph, who just graduated from UNCG, who's one of the sharpest young people that I've seen and come across. He's our data analyst, working with the AI technology, you know, things that are above my pay grade. I don't understand that stuff, but he can decipher it and help. And he landed, I'll tell y'all, he landed a new business downtown. I gave them to him, and Joseph solidified them, and they signed a lease on Davie Street. You'll be hearing about that real soon. Got Rob Overman, who used to run the downtown parks, been around for a long time. Yeah. He's doing special projects, so the Depot project, the outside dining project, basically anything that we think of that I say, Rob, this is yours. Yeah. Cassie is a young talent originally from Raleigh, who does our social media. If your folks aren't following our social media, please, on our Instagram, Facebook, we've got over 25,000 followers.
And tell them to call the address.
It's downtowngreensboro.org, and just click on those little icons. And she does a great job. She'll walk and introduce, like y'all did. Yeah. She'll walk this, up and down the street and just say, hey, why are you downtown? What are you doing downtown? Yeah. She'll introduce you to the ambassadors. Sean Eisenbach is the head of the ambassadors. Stacy Calfo helps with our marketing and branding and working with media, but also everybody dives in. And then Joey Ross, who has worked with Bill Mangum for a long time, and been, still does. She's our finance person, but she is a great person for me to work with. That, I am not surrounded by yes people. I can tell you that. We are a team that is not afraid to say, hold on a minute, let's think about it this way. Yeah. And so she's just fantastic.
I think you had some questions.
I didn't have any cool quotes like y'all did. I was trying to think of one, but talked about, you mentioned the old News and Record building, and that did bring up a question about the incident recently where someone was shot, I believe, in that building. And it made me think of the article that was written in the News and Record on the homelessness that's in there, and when that building, is re-signed, I guess, where are these homeless people going to go? And I know that's not your, I know you have to handle it. It's kind of dumped in your lap. Mm-hmm. But that's not your, I guess, is there any kind of plan for homelessness and working with the homeless organizations in that respect?
Tiffany, who was the one that was shot and killed a few weeks ago, she came down to city council, and I'll never forget it, looked at me and said, "Zach, you're the only one trying to help us get a house." And if you go back to that day, it's her and Melvin, her boyfriend. That was a tough one for me. Lansford, who was shot and killed as well. We've got to, as a community, come together and collaborate. That's the word that I think of all the time. So, city councilors, we're not specialized in homeless, mental illness, substance abuse, but we fund organizations that are. So we have to, in September 14th, we have a work session where the continuum of care organizations are going to come talk to us as a city council to continue to think through the best ways to practice and help folks. The other thing is, it's not just an 8 to 5 job. I see certain areas of town, and it's not just downtown, it's throughout, that you really need to know it from 8 p.m. to midnight. And what are we doing from a casework standpoint? Folks that can get help, what can we do better? Some of it is breaking down the barriers of entry so it's not limited, that the folks that need help may not qualify because of one small technicality. And so it's having boots on the ground, and it is, I spend a lot of time on that issue, and ultimately we've got to collaborate with the service providers to make sure we are doing our best to help the folks in need, period. Whether it's shelter, housing, substance abuse, and quite frankly, the thing that is the most prevalent, in my opinion, is the mental aspect of the needs. And I think those folks, quite frankly, are the ones that are suffering the most. And I don't have the answers,
right?
But I'm hoping to partner with folks that can and do.
Well, and it's not like it's unique to us. I mean,
no.
Every city, some have it worse than we do, some have it much better. I'll segue because, Brian is a full-time fireman.
Right.
And, he and I talk, we'll go to lunch or we'll discuss the various things about the fire department. And much like businesses that will say, well, we can't get anyone to work, we're having a shortage, this and that. And to find out that actually occurs in the police, because you don't think about it, the police department, the fire department, and even other city and county positions. Are you guys finding that now as a problem, and what are the plans to alleviate it?
From a municipal standpoint, from a city standpoint, pay equity is important. The aspects is really unique. The work from home or flexible work environment is unique. I think nobody understands truly what to do about that. I had a meeting with the CEO of a national financial institution who said, "My folks are back to work, period."
Yeah.
Well,
but I look, and Lincoln Financial Building's empty.
It wasn't Lincoln Financial. Working with other folks in downtown, and so pay equity is important. I think there has to be some type of flexibility. GPD and public safety is a different animal. When you're in the line of fire, literally wearing a camera on your chest, and you don't know what you're going to see when you go up to a car or a house, that's public safety is challenging. But I think our Chief Thompson was the most thoughtful, creative during the budget process that the city did in trying to figure out how best to recruit. And I think from what I understand, our recruitment class is as high as it's been in a long time.
And I believe he at one point said we had like, I don't know what it was, like 80 positions. He's like, why don't we just take, he's like, we keep filtering out all these people. He's like, why don't we take like 40 positions, eliminate them and just give the rest of these people some money so that we can stop the hemorrhaging over here and figure out the recruiting over here.
Exactly.
In the meantime, and I felt like that was a pretty smart move on his part.
It was a very smart move.
Yeah.
Let's focus. He couldn't hire 100 people in the next 12 months anyway. So let's focus on what we can do and pay the current officers what they deserve to make. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And you mentioned Sage Mule and some of those restaurants, Machete and those down there, but it is amazing how many people live here now that didn't live here. And I mean younger people. When I look at those buildings down there around the stadium, and I come in the morning, I leave in the afternoon, I come down here on the weekends, and to see that vibrancy, whether they're walking a dog or just out jogging or whatever, you didn't see that 15, 20 years ago.
No, you probably saw tumbleweeds.
Yeah.
Natty Greens, McCool's, The View on Elm were long-standing businesses that have been in business almost right at 20 years. Cheesecakes by Alex.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great story. Yeah. He's been down here probably right at 20 years. Yeah. And so we've got great successes that have been sustainable. Area Furniture, he was across the tracks, and he's been down here 20 years. Yeah. And so we've got really great stories. Mellow Mushroom helped on the south end. Chez Genet, if you haven't been there, the story that they do is phenomenal.
And not only that, but the food is good.
The food is fantastic.
And the atmosphere is wonderful. And you can't say, if you haven't been, you need to take some time out, go down there. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, folks, we want to maintain the authenticity of our heart of Greensboro. We're not looking to grow outside of what is authentic. We will eventually in some capacity. But if we can grow respectfully and thoughtfully, and we are going to, the ballpark area is probably going to explode in a good way. You're going to have more restaurants over there, more housing. The Marshalls you can see the flat dirt. They're probably going to go vertical along Spring Street and Smith on the northwest corner. We're meeting with the property on the northeast corner of downtown. We've got restaurants that are knocking at our door. And so I think we can continue to grow, and not a bland institutional way, but in a way that's thoughtful and authentic. The next 5 years, as I see it, are going to be incredibly exciting.
Are you looking around? Do you have like scouts, or do you scout out other downtowns? Maybe when you go on a trip or whatever, you're like, that's I'd like to have that, whatever it is that's in other places, Nashville, Charlotte, wherever.
I'm fortunate that for the last 2 years, I've been the president of North Carolina Downtown Development Association. And I'm currently also on the International Downtown Association board. The best thing about those two is the connections that you make. So having run the North Carolina area, I can call friends in certain communities that run their respective downtowns, or uptowns as some of them like to be called, and say, hey, you've got this restaurateur that has 6 or 7 restaurants. Are they looking to grow? Would you consider introducing me to? And you develop those. And I'll tell you, Friday, I had a meeting, and there's a restaurant that will be recruiting out of Mecklenburg County that is looking to come to Greensboro. And when you show those numbers, that you have 9 million visitors a year, and 427,000 go to the Tanger Center, that's less than 20%. Those numbers, a business owner says,
money talks.
Let's talk.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
talk. What's rent like? And I'm like, it's still an inexpensive, comparatively speaking. And so yes, we're getting those looks, and I can make those calls.
You know, I've often thought, you know, the PTI has been a great thing, and I used to talk to Henry Isaacson, and he would tell me how in the early days Caesar Cone was so wanting the airport to be in Greensboro that he would buy up any land that would come for sale whenever it came up. And then when the airport authority had the money, he would sell it to them for exactly what he paid for it, not a penny more. And he did that because he knew that a vibrant airport would support a vibrant community. And I think we've seen that, you know, kind of have spurts, but I think as time goes by, we're going to see that become something more important. And what I'm leading to is, when I look at the number of nonstop direct flights out of Greensboro now, they're just to some cities that we could very well have some great partnerships with. And I mean, you know, when you look at Denver and you look at Orlando and you look at, I mean, we could actually, of course, we have the Chicago and the New York also, but we can make, you know, we can bring people here and let them see downtown and not just come on business. You know, I think once you're downtown, it's a whole different ballgame, because ours is like a small town uptown. You know?
The key thing on that created it lately was hotels.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, we had one hotel and a small boutique in the Biltmore, but that you had the Marriott, and that was it.
Yeah.
There was no competition.
Yep.
Well, then the Hyatt Place opened,
Yep.
and that was pre-COVID, was one of the fastest Hyatt Place lease-ups in their whole international market. The Hampton Inn opened, and if you haven't been to the Hampton Inn, they did a phenomenal job with their space. And now, you know, you've got Mr. Carroll going to do an AC hotel on the opposite corner of the Hyatt Place.
Right.
Well, then that gives people a reason to even come downtown.
Right.
And so now they're staying. A few more hotels can put us in more of a smaller convention type area, you know, market, because we're not in it right now. I mean, and so we've got some space, but we don't have the beds for the heads.
Right.
So that is growing, and so those things continuing to grow is what's going to make folks come down here. And then when they come down here, they're like, holy cow,
Yeah.
this is
Well,
cool.
I want you to tell us what you can. I realize you can't tell us everything, but when you say convention, I think about the talk of a convention center right across the street here.
I mean, you know, the Quarry Center, it would be virtually impossible to ever duplicate that. I mean, what they have at their space, you know, Grand Dover Resort is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think there's an area that downtown could complement what Quarry owns. I think that you don't need a whole lot of, it doesn't have to be massively big. But the thing about it is, you know, we had a couple hundred rooms, 250 rooms at the Marriott, and that was it.
Yeah.
So if a convention has 500 people, we can't fit it right now.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
They would, between the Hampton, the Hyatt, and the Marriott, and even the Biltmore, we're right around 500 rooms.
Yeah.
Now with the AC, that helps. This property at the News and Record, certainly we could use another hotel component. If the Westin gets built, which they have told me that it is, that puts us up there a little bit more, and they will have space.
How many rooms are they looking at?
I want to say it's 180 rooms.
That's good.
But the News and Record site, they are keeping their eyes and ears open to many possibilities, and they're doing a great job speaking to the community, speaking with folks about what can go on that site.
Right.
And it's phenomenal. Like I said, honestly, having walked the building a couple weeks ago, it was a lot cleaner inside than I anticipated.
Well, I have to laugh. It's like, you know, there's certainly not any News and Record people there in a long time.
No, but there's been other folks. I had a meeting with Alan Johnson. I told him about it. His mail slot's still there.
Yeah.
The newspaper that's in the print, it was September 20th, 2017, the last time that they used that print facility.
Wow.
And the paper's still in there. And so we walked it with the folks. It's a lot cleaner than we thought, and I'm excited to see what happens. What else you want to know? I can see the ballpark having around, you've got Mr. Carroll's $100 million development. You can have probably 2 more $100 million developments north and adjacent to the ballpark that are in whisper phases. You've got probably a $100 million project on the northeast corner of town that hopefully we're going to get across the finish line next year. I mean, it's August. The south end, figuring out the south end land where the Union Square building is, where the Lidl grocery store was hopefully supposed to go, and what's going to happen there. But then filling in the areas in between. And you can't lose sight of Main Street, which is Elm Street.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know we're toward the end.
Oh yeah, we got about 3 minutes left. I wanted to ask, how do you balance out? John mentioned the 3 people that you are, representative, DGI, and father. How do you balance out these 3? Is there a cutoff for you? Like, all right, I'm done with this, and now we have compartmentalized, to
I
this.
spend my day predominantly downtown Greensboro Incorporated. My kids come first. So I left and took my daughter to get her physical for her athletic tryout this afternoon. And when I go home, I focus on my kids for an extended period of time. I put them to bed, we say our prayers, and then I go back to work. And it's downtown Greensboro, it's the city, it's responding to emails and doing the best I can. And then hopefully at 10:30, I'm shutting it down.
Wow. Yeah. I'm not standing in line to take your place, okay? I'm just.
Are you? I know you took a stab at a representative, moving up the chain as far as a representative. Any thoughts of that?
Best thing that ever happened to me was not winning that election. My kids.
Now, I thought it was the sign out in the ballpark. That was.
My kids are young. I've got a stepson that's 22 that's finishing up at UNCW. I'm focused on Greensboro. I'm focused on my family, my kids, and quite frankly, it's also time for me to focus on me. So they say that when the plane's going down, the oxygen, you put it on yourself so you can take care of others. I've got to work on that a little bit. But we got a lot to accomplish in Greensboro, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
Wow. Well, that's a perfect statement to end on. Zach, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you,
This has
man.
been a pleasure. We hope to have you back.
Absolutely, anytime.
Hey, we'll come back. We'll do the trolley next time.
Absolutely.
When I get you on you just hop on the trolley and we'll do the whole thing.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank you so much for watching our program.